Hello guys, it's Jonathan here doing another BakuTech video. This time I'm going to rank every single BakuTech deck. So there were 12 main decks, however there were 3 additional Core decks that actually came out before the main decks, but anyway. So I'll count all 3 of those as well, so we'll have 15 placements to go through. So one main note of this video is that I will be giving these Bakugan the ability to kind of max their potential. What I mean by that is, if they are part of the convert system, I will allow them to use a full metal if they want, or whatever metal distribution works best for them, because, well, here's the thing. A lot of these decks would be kind of worthless without that, or would just be much, much worse, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to restrict them in that way, so if they can use more metal parts, they can. That's my one, I guess, rule here that will change some of the placements, but with that in mind, let's just go ahead and get started in the ranking. Number 15, the Hollow Deck. The Hollow Deck is by far the worst deck in BakuTech. This deck is terrible, so first up, MacLeod. We can't even see it because it's too tall. I think this is the only Bakugan we'll have a problem with in the setup, but anyway. MacLeod is very tall. It does nothing. Has absolutely no metal, no important springs. This thing has 0 attack potential, and defensively it's a joke. It falls over, doesn't take up much space. By far the worst Bakugan in BakuTech competitively. Shina's-chi isn't much better. Again, 0 attack potential, but as far as defense goes, it's like a normal shape, I guess, so there's that. Also, it has like a tail, so like there's, I guess, a little bit of occupancy there, but it's still bad, it's still light, it gets pushed around easily. It's just like the bare minimum of what you'd expect from a Bakugan in BakuTech, except with no metal or any additional gimmicks to make this thing stand out, so it's pretty terrible. Hollow Minicus is the one bright spot here. It's the one good thing. This is actually a pretty good Bakugan. You have curve shots. It's also a good attacker. It has that going for it. It's not crazy, but it's a good good B tier Bakugan within BakuTech. So you know what, Hollow Minicus is a pretty solid Bakugan, but these two are both abysmal, and yeah, the deck is worthless because yeah, you aren't getting by on one Bakugan alone. You need at least like 2 decent Bakugan to go anywhere, and even then that's not ideal. And especially when your 2 other Bakugan are these 2, yeah, that's rough. Number 14, the Rise Deck. The Rise Deck is better than the Hollow Deck. Gus Burnin is terrible. It's very similar to like Shina's-chi, I'd say, where it's just bad. Its shape isn't good. It's worse, I'd say, except I guess, like, I don't know, it's not much better. I don't know where I'm going with that. It's really not anything good. There's no metal, no attack potential. Defensively, these wings, like, okay, they're there, but it's not good. The occupancy isn't good. It's on par with Shina's-chi, which is just a very, very, low-tier Bakugan. Naranagina's actually not bad. This thing, metal soul pieces, it's something. Also it has a very, very long tail here, and this part, yeah, even longer, so not bad. This thing is like very alright, but sure. Definitely a better second Bakugan, well, second best Bakugan in the deck opposed to the Hollow Deck. Rise Dragon's also a really good attacker, so there's that. Definitely actually just a good Bakugan overall. Very, very good attacker, but it's not a top tier attacker, and also, yeah, you have like an okay Bakugan and a bad Bakugan. So the Rise deck, it's better than the Hollow Deck, but it's still pretty subpar, I would say. Number 13, the Perfect Stand Set. The Perfect Stand Set is our first Core deck, and it's definitely the worst of them. This deck is, it's okay. Grand Panzer is the main issue here. This thing, despite having 2 metal cross pieces and 4 additional metal pieces, it just has very awkward metal distribution. I feel like curve shotting it is, it's okay, but I still find it awkward. As an attacker, it's decent, but honestly, just use a Bakugan with 4 metal pieces. Honestly, that's better. So yeah, this thing's also meant to be like a really good defensive Bakugan. It's not. It has 0 occupancy, and its defense is kind of a joke. So not a great Bakugan. These 2, Keolanus and Flare Dragon, are both actually like pretty solid. Keolanus, has some occupancy, solid defense, got a metal strip on the bottom, also a cross piece in the back, on the tail, that's nice, and then Flare Dragon, I make use 4 metal pieces. That's pretty good. So these two are pretty solid. This Bakugan isn't. This isn't a terrible deck or anything. It's just dated, and overall, yeah, it's just kind of there, honestly. Number 12, the Ocean deck, Team Dragon. Yeah, these first two decks have very awkward names. I just call it the Dragon deck. Anyway, the Bakugan here are decent. Van Falco is like an all-right attacker. It's like a little tail thing where it can jump to the next card, which, gonna be honest, I was found it to be like a little bit worthless, but I mean, it's a feature, but yeah, overall, it's like an okay attacker. It's kind of big, so I guess you get a little bit of defense occupancy out of that, but nothing that notable. These two, Destroymanicus and Flare Dragon. We're talking about Flare Dragon, like pretty solid Bakugan, you know, being a Bakugan that can have 4 metal pieces, good attacker. Destroymanicus, very similar, can have 4 metal pieces. Good for curve shots as well. That's nice, but yeah, these two I would kind of say that they're counterparts. I mean, quite literally, but they're both pretty solid Bakugan. I like them. Van Falco is definitely the weak link here, but overall, when you compare it to like the perfect stanza, I think that this is a better deck overall because, well, the worst Bakugan here is better than the worst in that one, and then I would say Destroymanicus and Keolanus. I would say Destroymanicus is better than Keolanus, although you might get a little bit better coverage with using Keolanus, but at the same time, I'd rather use this deck over that one because that is Grand Panzer. I don't like Grand Panzer, so this one's a little bit better at the very least. Number 11, the Battlemaster set. The Battlemaster set, well, it's literally what we just talked about from the Dragon deck. It's the same thing. Same Bakugan. I even switched Van Falco into Destroymanicus' placement, so you can just tell it's a little bit different, but yeah, overall, it's the same kind of deck. But Flare Dragon, Destroymanicus, Van Falco. The reason I put this one a spot above is because, first, it did come out before, so it gets that priority, but also it does come with all metal pieces. Well, I mean, I guess, you get the soul pieces here that are metal, but the plastic or, cross pieces up here. Same with, Flare, but still. I know I used the regular versions when I showed the Dragon deck, but those were actually the booster versions. I didn't buy the deck because I already have the Bakugan from it, but, Destroymanicus and Van Falco are full plastic in that deck. In this one, they have metal parts as they would have in the booster versions, so because you do start off at a little bit of a better position in terms of metal, and also it was first, I will put this deck one spot above, but it's effectively the same exact thing. Number 10, the Go deck. The Go deck is weird. So you do get a really good Bakugan in Go Garyu. Go Garyu, this thing alone, like this thing in terms of attack is incredible. It is in contention for the best attacker in the game. A lot of people say it is the best. I think Sansu Halbos is like marginally better, but I mean, it's top 2 regardless, and it's very close between those two, I would say. So regardless, you're getting an incredible attacker here. But like I said earlier, one Bakugan cannot carry a deck, and that's the problem here. I mean, Cal Lucan is fine. It does have the whole thing where its cross parts, when closed, are at kind of an angle, which does give it interesting movement. It's a solid Bakugan for sure, but I don't really think that warrants a whole lot. And Warcry, despite these parts looking like cross pieces, they aren't. It's full plastic. Yeah, the shape is actually not horrible. It'd be okay for defense and occupancy with metal, but it doesn't have metal, so it's kind of, well, I mean, the occupancy is okay, I guess, but it has like no defense to back that up, and also with having no metal, it means like 0 attack potential, so yeah, this thing isn't very good, and because of that, you get a pretty bad Bakugan, a very just kind of alright Bakugan, and then a really good Bakugan. This deck doesn't work very well, I would say, so it's definitely not horrible, because you still get Go Garyu in this. I mean, Cal Lucan's not horrible or anything, so it can work, but it's just pretty low compared to the other Gachi decks because of that, I would say. Number 9, the Wind deck. The Wind deck is a really awkward one to rank, so Hagrid is pretty bad, actually. Has this button, it can grab Bakugan, which doesn't really actually do a whole lot. It's supposed to make a good defensive Bakugan, but it kind of isn't. Has like okay defense occupancy, I guess, but like nothing really that good. The gimmick doesn't work particularly well. I guess it can if you get lucky, but still, I just don't think it's great. And while you can put 2 metal cross parts, so it could technically be like a bare minimum attacker, the problem is it has this button. And this button makes it awkward to roll. This thing sucks to roll. I hate rolling this thing. So because of that, I guess you like try and spin shot it, but then you don't get the proper gimmick usage because while you're spinning, you don't get to face the way you want to. This thing doesn't really work conceptually all that well, so I don't know what they're really going for here. Now, Dagger Otis, this thing, you can, put a couple metal parts on here if you want to. It's a pretty bulky Bakugan. You get some defense occupancy out of it. It works fairly alright, I would say, but it's nothing incredible. It's just pretty solid. Windmill, though, this thing is actually a great attacker. I would argue third best in the game behind Sanzu Halibos and Gogaryu. I think this thing is incredible, but it's awkward to use. It is very, very awkward, and it's hard to recommend because of that. This deck's in a weird spot because this thing is just weird. If you don't know what you're doing, you're getting this thing out of the box. This deck is actually pretty bad because this thing is like okay at best. This thing's bad. This thing's solid, but so you're not getting a whole lot. But max potential, this thing's actually like, insane. This thing's solid. This thing's bad. So it's kind of like the Go deck in that sense. Although I do feel like you get a little bit more out of Dagger Otis than you do Kalukin, and then also I think Hybrid Guma is still better than Warcry, and Windmill and Gogaryu, I think Gogaryu is better, but I think Windmill's close, and Windmill's very weird to counter as well. I think that Dagger Otis does help the deck to feel a little bit more complete as well, so you know what, I'll put it a spot above, but not by much. It's on thin ice, but the deck is, alright. Number 8, the dead center of the list, the Saint Dragon Ultra Hybrid deck, or as I call it, the Hyper deck. The Hyper deck is actually pretty solid. You have Van Falco. I already talked about it. It's a solid attacker, I guess. Keolanus is a pretty solid defensive Bakugan, as we talked about. And then St. Aqua's. This thing's actually pretty good. I think that, it has 4 metal pieces, or at least with the potential to. So, it's a solid attacker. Also, it's pretty large. And all the metal pieces, including the cross pieces, are kind of lower to the ground. So its defense and occupancy are pretty solid, I would say, and yeah, it has pretty decent attack. It's a good all-rounder. You also have some low-G stuff you could do. So this Bakugan also has this other mode, with the low-G stuff, can work for double stands. So this Bakugan's actually pretty good. And this is like the first deck that I feel like is a pretty complete deck, honestly. So you have a defensive Bakugan, attack Bakugan, a hybrid Bakugan. It works pretty well together. It's just that these Bakugan are old and dated, so it's not the best deck of all time at this point, but you know what? It is still a very, very solid deck. Definitely the best of the Korokoro decks that we got. Number 7, moving into the top half of the list, we have the Sanzu deck. The Sanzu deck is interesting, so Go Tanker with 2 metal pieces is like a bare minimum alright attack Bakugan, I guess. It doesn't do a whole lot. It's not really that good. Ken Panzer with metal pieces is actually like a pretty solid defensive Bakugan. Occupancy is okay, but yeah, it's a decent defensive Bakugan, not bad at all. And then Sanzu Halibos, I talked about this thing a little bit earlier, in contention for the best attack Bakugan in the game. A lot of people put it second. I personally think it's the best, so regardless, it's top 2. This thing's insane. Ken Panzer's a pretty solid defensive Bakugan, and Go Tanker's like alright, but yeah. It's definitely a step up from the Go deck, I would say, because you have a Bakugan that, well, it's another top tier attacker, so that's nice, but you get like an actual like pretty good Bakugan, well, solid Bakugan, and then, something else that, unlike Warcry, is usable, so, it's a pretty decent deck, I would say. You can get by with this one. Number 6, the Griff deck. The Griff deck is strange, because it actually has 2 main Bakugan instead of 1. So the deck filler is Goonicarus. Goonicarus is actually pretty alright, I'd say. 2 metal cross pieces, the shape, it has some bulk to it, it has a little bit of, size to it, so there's that. It's not great, but it's okay, and this is definitely the better of the 2 modes. LaShaw Falco, definitely, well, I don't know if I'd say it's the worst Falco, but it's not great. The whole thing about this thing is that it's fast, which is very stupid. It's a decent attacker, but nothing really that big, that great. It is kind of big, though, so a little bit of occupancy out of it. It's like, okay in that sense, but it's an alright Bakugan. Ogre Leonis, though, very good Bakugan for both attack and defense, has some occupancy to back it up. So this deck is overall, I would say, pretty solid, I think. These 2 are pretty decent for attack, for attack Bakugan. This thing can also be a good attack Bakugan, but also has defense. Again, kind of like the Hyper deck, I feel like it's just a very complete deck in that sense, even though it's not the best deck, but this one, I think you can, open this one up out of the box, although probably not out of the box because of how expensive it is nowadays, but still, back in the day you could open this one up and it'd be usable. It's decent. you get some stuff going on here, even though it isn't the best. Number 5, the Shitsujin deck Shadow Sanjushi, or as I call it, the Shadow deck. Anyway, another complicated name, but this one a little bit weird to show. I mean, these Bakugan are kind of big. Well, Hergezer's pretty big, so sorry for the awkward setup, but yeah, here's the 3 of them. Of these 3, well, Gallo is definitely the worst because, well, the rubber on this thing isn't actually that good for it. Metal's better. It works as like a okay attacker, but not like that great, but still. Now, there are pieces that are actually good on other Bakugan, so I guess that's one thing that's going for it. Borg Mahesis, this is definitely the better of the angled cross-part Bakugan, so you get some weird, you know, curve shots and stuff, but this thing also opens up to be like a pretty decent, you know, defense occupancy Bakugan. Nothing crazy, but decent, and again, had the curve shot stuff going on, so this is actually a pretty good Bakugan, I would say. And then Acrogezer, this thing is well known for its size. Of course, you know, its occupancy and defense are really good. It's a metal up front with these cross pieces if you choose to, so again, this is just a pretty good deck. I'd say this is kind of levels up things, definitely better than the previous ones we've shown, so not bad at all. So just a little bit outdated, I would say, but still nothing bad. I mean, these two on their own are actually pretty good. I mean, if we had a better Bakugan opposed to Will Gallo, this could have been actually a decent bit higher, but unfortunately that's not the case. But Will Gallo is at least not terrible, so it's not like gonna tank the score of the deck or anything. Number 4, the Champion deck. This thing's called a Champion deck for a reason, and it's pretty good. So first up, Gift Shinryu, definitely the worst Bakugan here. Its defense and occupancy are like okay, but the problem is it's just too high up off the ground. So like a lot of these parts don't actually block as well as you'd think, and it has 2 cross parts, so I guess you get a little bit of attack on this thing. It's just not nearly as good as you think it would be, but it's at least usable. It's not bad in a deck, it's just not as good as you'd hope, but it's still alright. It's still a little bit of defense and occupancy to add to this deck, so I guess there's that at least. We then have Rise Dragon and G-Ganoretta. These are both like really, really good attackers. Talked about Rise Dragon. This thing, you know, pops out really good. I mean, this thing just pops out a lot. Everything just comes up, like, you know, the arms, the wings, the head with the horn. Everything really just comes out, which is great. And G-Ganoretta kind of on this like same tier. I don't actually know which one I consider better. They're kind of up in the air, honestly. But anyway, G-Ganoretta. 2 metal parts, very balanced when it rolls, which is great, but also the gravity ring helps with the plant, which means that you could slam into another Bakugan and actually land without, you know, worrying as much about flying off the card, because it, well, yeah, it just plants better, so has that going for it. So, you know what, 2 really, really good attackers, a, you know, an all-right defensive Bakugan is just big, so sure, but makes for a pretty solid deck overall. Not number 1 or anything, but still definitely good. Number 3, the Shield deck, the best of the original BakuTech decks, before you get to Gachi. So the Shield deck is really good. You got Gravity Gnome here. Tall Bakugan aren't the best, but at the same time you can get 4 metal pieces on this thing, so it's actually a pretty solid attacker, although it is the worst 4 metal piece attacker in my opinion, because it has like this little extra plastic ridge on this thing, which makes it worse to roll, but it doesn't impede it horribly. It's just a little bit extra, you know, annoying. I wish it wasn't there, but it doesn't destroy the Bakugan. It's still a good Bakugan. It's just, again, the worst of the 4 metal piece Bakugan, but it does still have the potential to have 4 metal pieces, so anyway. Daifujo, this thing can kind of fall over onto its face, and it becomes a really good defense occupancy Bakugan on a similar party or something like Acro Gizzard, I would say, so really good. Also Shield Leonis here, 3 metal parts. It's wide enough to cover, you know, most of a card, and it's pretty good defensively, so get a really good defensive Bakugan, a really, really good defense occupancy Bakugan, and a pretty solid attacker. This is a pretty complete deck, I would say. Definitely more on the defensive side, but still you do have an attacker, so this deck, it just works. It's a really good deck, so again, definitely the best of the older decks, but there are 2 later decks I do think exceed this thing. Number 2, the Jaiba deck. Yeah, the Jaiba deck is really good. Agile is definitely the weak link here. So the problem with Agile is that it's just tiny, doesn't have any attack or defense potential at all. However, it can slot itself in nicely for double stance. Also, when you pick it up, it does have the auto close feature, which is good in Gachi. So that's nice. Also, it's a random G power, but nothing is really high or low enough to be good. Also, there's only one low G thing here, which is 200, and I wouldn't want to chance a low G setup, honestly. I'd rather just use a Bakugan with solid, like a proper solid low G G power. But its max is 680, which is pretty decent, but still can get outworked pretty easily. So this thing's not great, but again, because you can use it so quickly by picking it up, you know, just automatically closes. Also, can slot itself in nicely for double stance, which works especially well with this deck. I think it's pretty good, at least in the setup here, but overall, it's just kind of there. We also have Sea Slug. Sea Slug has 3 metal parts. This thing, I mean, yeah, pretty decent for attack, gives you some attack potential on the deck, but also it opens up to be, you know, decently large, nothing crazy. Like, it just has okay occupancy, I'd say. But, you know, again, with 3 metal parts, with the shape it has, it's a pretty okay defensive Bakugan, I would say. Get some attack potential out of it, some defensive potential out of it. It works. And also, you know, Jaibafudo, this is like the best pure defense Bakugan in the game, has enough occupancy to back up the defense as well. Of course, has a second magnet in the back, which makes this thing a very, very good, like top tier for sure. But with 2 Bakugan that can at least defend, having something like actually able to slot in for double stands, that actually works pretty well. So being a good defensive deck here definitely does work out quite well. And again, Sea Slug, you can at least, you know, have some attack going, which works decently well, I would say. Number 1, the Dragon deck. Yeah, this is not only the best deck of BakuTech Gachi, but the best deck in general. Well, first up, you can't even see these two because the wings are blocking them, but let's go to Engelide. These Bakugan aren't actually all that great. However, Engelide, you know, you do have the 2 soul pieces, make those metal, has a groove on the top that makes it, you know, roll straight, which is nice. Also, has some bulk to it as well. This thing is decent at defense, kind of like Sea Slug in that sense, where yes, you can use it as a defensive Bakugan, but also, yeah, I mean, you can use it as an attacker, although with the lack of metal, it's a little bit questionable. It's still, it could definitely attack, it could definitely defend. It's just okay at both, though, but yeah, Let's Go can kind of 4 metal pieces. This thing also curve shots really well, which is nice, or you just roll it normally, because yes, you know, 4 metal pieces. It works well. So these 2 Bakugan on their own, I would say, are decent. These would actually be a pretty, you know, these make a good deck as, you know, deck filler Bakugan. You know, if you have a good Bakugan at the helm, I think these 2 work pretty well, but would not be the number 1 deck is what I'm trying to get at. But having Dragon Dragon here, this thing is what really does it in, because this thing is not only a top tier attack Bakugan, but also a very high tier defense Bakugan, because since it's, you know, its wings ahead could drop down. This thing has pretty good defense and occupancy. It can do whatever you want. It's also Pyrus, which is great, has a high G power. This thing just does it all. So, really, you can't complain about it. It's such an incredible Bakugan. It's the best Bakugan in BakuTech for sure. And again, with 2, you know, at least, you know, decent enough Bakugan behind it, it gets away with that. Yes, some other decks here might be better in other ways, but I think when you have Bakugan like this, you know, as the main Bakugan of the deck with 2 Bakugan that are still good enough, I think, yeah, you get away with it because it's just that good. Yeah, Dragon Drone is definitely that good. If you use it defensively, well, Let's Go has good curve shot stuff, so yes, you can, you know, slot in double stands and stuff, and it's also pretty small, which works very well. Also, as an attacker, yeah, this thing is crazy, so you know what? It just kind of wins on its own with 2 Bakugan that complement it at least decently well. Yeah, it's the best deck in BakuTech for sure. So there you have it, my deck rankings. A lot of these are pretty contentious. If you ask me in like a year, my list could be totally different, honestly, but I think as of now, I think this is like a pretty solid list. I don't think there's any egregious placements here, but I think some of them, again, are questionable. Maybe like switch some around, for sure, but overall, I think this is like a close enough ranking. Again, definitely some debatable ones. You could definitely debate even like the Dragon deck being number 1 if you want like a more complete deck over it, sure, but I just think Dragon Drone is just that good. So, anyway, that is my ranking on every single BakuTech deck. I'll probably do one of like sets eventually, but we'll see. Anyways, that's all for this video, so thanks for watching, and bye-bye.